everyone. Welcome back to the Living Generationally podcast. I am your host, Brianna Laurie, and this podcast exists to encourage you to consider how your daily actions and decision making not only impact the current generation, but also the next generation as well too. I believe starting with how we steward our everyday life can create legacies that carry on into the future. And that is important. We don't want to just create things that just begin and end with our life. We want to create a life that we are being intentional with how we steward the day to day, but also the way we live and what we are building can be passed down onto the next generation. And I want to encourage you in that. And I want to walk alongside you in that process because I know that it can be tricky, it can be hard to navigate. How do I live an intentional life when there's everyone telling me this is how I should live? How do I steward the everyday when I have this time, when I have so much time in my hands, or you may not have that much time in your hands. So I want to walk alongside you and learn with you, because I'm learning and growing as well too. And I am really encouraged that you decided to come back and listen to another podcast episode. And if you enjoy this podcast, I would very much appreciate if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can see me in person. Hello. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can listen to more content that's similar to this, that Living Generationally has to offer. Yeah, and if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, hello. Head on over to YouTube if you want to watch the video. But I would appreciate if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, if you can leave a comment or a rating or review. It just helps people to know that you like this podcast, and also to rate the podcast as well too. Today's topic came from me just realizing how we are living in a time where our attention is very much being contended for. I don't know if that is the right wording I'm looking for. That our attention is very much being occupied by different things. And many people see that our attention is an opportunity for them to make money. We know that with big tech and these different things, our attention is very much a part of them building their brand or their business and to reaching out to more people. And I've been wondering and pondering this idea of boredom. And I know if you listen, you're like, Brianna, okay, where are you going with this? But I just want to kind of pick your, not pick your brain, but I kind of want to um, get your brain thinking on this topic and subject. 'Cause I think it's important, and I think it's worth to discuss about. And I am wondering, like, have you ever wondered what could happen if you embrace boredom rather than trying to get rid of it? What if it is actually a hidden treasure that can lead to a more fulfilling life? And that doesn't sound very selling when you first hear that, because you're like, boredom, like, I don't like being bored. It's boring. That's what, and it's like, um, yeah, but though there is an unpleasantness of boredom, I think it's important that we um, begin to unlock the beauty of it, because I believe when we begin to actually dive into just being still and not having many distractions, I think we have some hidden treasure of creativity and peacefulness, which I feel like many of us are lacking because we're either distracted or overwhelmed with cultural and societal issues. And being distracted, the idea of being bored sounds like a nightmare to many of us. And I know even me pondering this podcast episode, like, I struggle with just being still and being bored. I am looking for the next thing to do. I'm looking for something to stimulate me and to get me going. And it's like, but then when I do that, my brain doesn't get a chance to relax. It doesn't get a chance to think and to be present where I am. And I think that many of us are in that place where we want to live a life where we're being more intentional, and we can actually get into this creative side, but we don't know how to get there because we're so used to having social media or having YouTube playing, being on social media and scrolling, or having YouTube playing in the background, or constantly having something in our ear while we're doing something. And I think it's important that we recognize that we aren't actually being intentional in those moments. We are just allowing things to distract us and to take our attention away from the task that we're doing at hand. And that is not good. And many people are struggling with chronic illnesses and different things. And I don't know the entirety of what causes chronic illness, but I do believe a part of it is just your body running and running and running and running and not having a chance to actually to truly relax. And I think being able to sit down and actually allow yourself to be bored is important. And though initially boredom may be unpleasant when you're trying to train yourself to actually sit still, it can be unpleasant. You are entering into something that is different. Your body hasn't actually been able to sit and relax and just sit and be present rather than having something playing in your ear or you being stimulated by something else. And even as I am taking those steps to grow in this area, I'm recognizing that it is challenging, it is stretching. But as I press forth in the uncomfortability of boredom, I realize that there's so much there. My brain is running, there are thoughts running through my brain. And I think many of us are afraid to just sit alone by ourselves because we're afraid of our thoughts, what we're going to think. Or, um, yeah, we just we don't like being alone and with our thoughts. And I think that is not a good thing. We need to allow our brains to think. And I think in doing that, we allow ourselves to be creative, but we also get to see parts of ourselves that needs to be worked on and how we can build our character too. If we're constantly distracted and overwhelmed or on to the next thing, how can the Lord work on that character, but also how can we take the steps to work on ourselves as well too, if we're constantly being distracted and not having an opportunity to examine our life and to examine where we're at and areas that we need to grow in. And though boredom can be unpleasant initially, I think embracing it leads to so much fruit. Embracing it allows you to go deeper in your relationships with those in your life. It allows creativity to start stirring because now you're in a state where you're like, okay, I can't externally entertain myself with anything, so I have to internally entertain myself. That's where your creativity starts to be born, and your imagination. And many of us don't even have an imagination. Like, I believe that is kind of taken out of us at a very young age as we start to get into academics and get into a, a school system that is kind of very broken, and it doesn't really encourage creativity as much. Not saying it doesn't at all, but it doesn't encourage creativity. It's um this system where you just have to you're mostly your kids are sitting all day and not able to actually embrace their imagination or the beauty of creativity. And some and not that that doesn't happen, but it seems like it gradually starts to decrease over time as you get into the older as you get older and get into the later years of school. And I can attest to that. I've um, thought I was never a creative person, or that I couldn't be creative. And as I start to remove certain distractions from my life, I began to realize that oh, like I can create. It's just I've been in a place where I've been so distracted, and I've been already stimulated and entertained. So my brain is like, why do I need to entertain myself? Why do I need to be creative? Why do I need to create skills if someone else is already doing it for me, or someone else is already entertaining me, or someone else is already um, doing everything for me, and I don't need to do anything myself? And um, if you're like me, and you want to be creative and you want to be skillful with your hands, you have to come to a place where you're not distracted, because within our culture, in our day and age, it isn't natural for us to go towards a thing where that it may be more slower pace, or may take time, or there may be more frustration in starting a new skill. And I realized that because as I started crochet and these other projects, I'm realizing they take time, and it takes patience, and it's a slowness, and your mind has to slow down and be aware. There's no multitasking, and that's something I've also come to realize, is that our brain can't actually multitask. We may think that we're multitasking, but it's actually our brain shifting from one activity to the other, and that actually isn't good for our brain. It actually overwhelms us, and our brain isn't allowed to focus on that one task, but we're constantly shifting focus, and we're wondering why our attention spans are shorter, and why we can't focus on one task at a time. And it's because our brains are so used to shifting and not being intentional with each task that we are given. And I think that's important, because if we want to build intentional lives, and if we want to be wise with our time, and we have to be aware of what we're doing, and we have to be focused. We can't be constantly shifting from one thing to the other, because in doing that, that's creating this disproportion with our our brain and the present moment. We're not able to truly focus on what we're doing at hand. And even thinking about social media and technology, and thinking about like TikTok and Instagram, and now we have short form content. And I'm not completely against short form content. I do it myself with the podcast clips and posting podcast clips. But I do believe there is a downside with shorter content, is that like you're just constantly scrolling and scrolling these 30-second and maybe minute videos, and your brain is having to adjust constantly rather than focusing on that one thing at hand. And doing this is creating um, a disproportion in our brain. Like I mentioned earlier, we're not able to actually focus on a task at hand, but we're constantly shifting focus and shifting focus. And we're seeing our attention spans start to decrease more and more, and that the idea of sitting still sounds crazy. Like, why would I sit still? Why would I do that? Why would I not be on my phone? Why would I remove that from my life? The idea of reducing our screen time sounds crazy, because we're so used to being overstimulated. We're so used to our attention spans being taken by our devices, or by social media, and by big tech. And big tech thrives on this. They thrive on our attention. That's how they make that's one of the, I mean, that is how they make their money, is by our attention. Our attention is their money making tool. The more of our attention that they have, the more money that they can make. And I want you to see that your attention is very precious, and that it's worth more than what you may think. And if you just take the time to sit still, you'll be surprised and amazed about the creative tools that you have. And even with your surroundings, and being able to create with what you have, um and the different gifts the Lord has given you. I'm just thinking, many of us maybe have gifts that the Lord has given us, but we don't know, because we're so busy, we're so distracted, and we haven't been in a place where we can actually be still, to actually take the time to recognize gifts that we may have, that we just don't know, because we're so distracted. Um, but I also think it's important that we not just shift the blame to big tech for this of our for them taking our attention spans, even though that's they're intentionally doing that. That's how they're making their profit. I do believe it's our choice too, because we're choosing each day to get on our phone, even though mindlessly. It's become more of a habit, but you're doing it mindlessly, but you're still making a choice to get on your phone, to get on TikTok, to get on social media and just scroll for hours and hours at a time. And we are it's impacting us very greatly. And I think if we actually begin to see the importance, I think the more we see the detriment of um, mindless scrolling and shorter attention spans, and how the negative effects of big tech and being constantly being distracted and overstimulated, we'll begin to see that actually being still and taking things slower and doing things at a more slower pace is actually so beneficial to us. And remember, like, um, this way of living is fairly new. We haven't lived most of history didn't live with the technologies that we have. And yes, their technology is more in a broader term, because we can think of different innovations as technology, not necessarily with the technologies that we have today. But with AI and artificial intelligence, this is fairly new. So back then, they had to, they're not that they had to, their lives were more slower paced. They were doing life with each other. Um, and things were more intentional. And I'm sure things got busy and that there was work in it, but it was more slower paced than what we have now, where everything is expected very quickly and instantly. And it's greatly impacting our society and our culture and this generation. And we're seeing that in statistics. We're seeing higher rates of depression, and we're seeing higher rates of mental illness, chronic illness, and many different things. And I believe it's coming from us just constantly being bombarded by different things, and our body just keep going and going and going, not having an opportunity to actually relax and to take a break. And that's why I think embracing boredom embracing boredom is very important, because if we don't, the side is that our body becomes so drained to the point it can just shut down. And we are seeing that. And I think also the response to like this very fast-paced life, we're starting to see people who are desiring a more slow-paced life. They're wanting to get into homesteading. They want to get into being more intentional with their life. And I think that's amazing, um, because I believe it's a better way to live more intentionally, where you are actually aware of what you're doing. You're aware of the task before you. And not to say that you have to have a homestead in order to do that. You can be intentional where you are right now and ask yourself, how much time am I spending on my phone? How much time am I spending on scrolling on social media? And how is this impacting me? How is this impacting me emotionally? Sometimes, I mean, so many of us don't um, maybe engage with our full emotions, because we're so distracted all the time that we don't know how to engage or properly regulate our emotions, because we're so distracted and overwhelmed and constantly in this place of this high dopamine hit, and just in this cycle, this constant cycle of craving it more and more. And embracing boredom is important so that we can break that habitual cycle that is keeping us um, kind of in bondage, and it is leading to lack of creativity and innovation as well too. And I was listening to a TED talk talking about boredom, and it was I think the lady in the video, I forgot her name, but I can link the TED talk in the description of the YouTube video, the podcast video. But she mentioned that teens who are constantly on social media and on their phone, I forgot, I don't know if it was like a study by a certain age, like they're less creative. I think that's what she mentioned. They're less creative and innovative, and it makes sense. It's like if you're being entertained all the time and you already have something that's kind of doing the creativity for you and is being innovative for you, it's like, why do you need to put yourself in a place where you have to grow and stretch and actually think very deeply? And that's another amazing thing about just the treasure of boredom, is that though it's uncomfortable, it it's like this internal muscle has to be exercised, where you get an opportunity to start thinking deeply and start thinking of how you can um, be innovative, how you can start creating, how you can create solutions to problems within our culture, in our society, and maybe even around you on a smaller scale locally, how you can get involved with different organizations, or how you can start your own organization. Many of these ideas do not come to us because we're constantly distracted and bombarded um, by someone else's life or media, that we don't actually get the time to take a deep breath and to sit still and just be present and aware. But also, boredom allows us to just relax. Boredom allows us to be more aware of our present surroundings and what we're doing. If we're constantly distracted, we're not actually embracing where we are. We're not actually present in the moment, but we are in another world. Um, we're not actually being where we are. And I think that getting in the way of us from truly relaxing and being able to decompress and to um, just be still. And something I'm learning in my own life, in my walk with the Lord, is that I truly believe that those who are able to be still before the Lord are those who are more resilient and strong in their faith, and those who know the Lord more intimately and can actually handle whatever comes their way. And not that hardships won't come or things aren't challenging or troubling, but they're resilient. They have the strength of the Lord with them. They know how to not run away from trouble, but face it head on, and to be resilient in that way. And I think the Lord is teaching me the beauty of being still before Him and just being able to commune with Him. And we miss out on so much when we're constantly distracted and we're not just allowing ourselves to be still or to be bored or to not have anything to do, but to just be in a state where we're not trying to entertain ourselves. We're not trying to seek the next dopamine high. We're not trying to escape, but we are being present and aware of what we are doing. And I want to encourage you, if you are struggling with being distracted and you see the unpleasantness of boredom, I want to challenge you to embrace it, and I want to encourage you to embrace it. And not to say that it isn't hard. Anything that you do for the first time can be challenging and stretching, but over time you get used to it as you press into the uncomfortability. That's how growth happens. You don't grow by staying in the same place and just allowing yourself to enjoy the comfortability of the same, but you grow by stepping out in faith and stepping into the uncomfortability and allowing that to stretch you and grow you. And um, I think it's important that we begin to open our eyes to see the importance and the treasure of boredom, the treasure that doesn't feel like treasure. It truly is a treasure. And at first I was like, Lord, this is not a treasure. Like, I'm just sitting here, I'm doing nothing. And if you watch or listen to previous podcast episodes, I've explained that I'm just sitting here doing nothing. Like, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. And constantly I hear the Lord reminding me to be still, to be still. And I've just come to accept it and embrace it. Okay, Lord, I'm going to be still. And in that, I received immense blessing of encouragement and his grace and the sweetness of slowing down and actually finding like, oh wait, I have hobbies. I love crocheting. I love being able to create and work with my hands. I love cooking. I love being creative. I love just sitting and allowing my thoughts to run and allow creativity to take over me. And I think it's amazing what could happen if we start embracing the gift of boredom and start to see it, to have a mindset shift of it not being a burden that we have to deal with, of a burden of uncomfortability or an unpleasant thing, but an opportunity to take us deeper in our walk with the Lord and in our life, and to be more present and aware of what we're doing. And one of my desires of living generationally is encouraging, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast episode, is encouraging you to consider how your daily actions and decision making not only impacts the current generation but also the next generation as well too. And a part of stewarding the day to day is being aware and present of what we're doing. If we're constantly being distracted or overwhelmed or overstimulated or looking for the next dopamine high, we're not being present. We're not being. We're called human beings. We're called to be still before the Lord. We're called to be in his presence. We're called to be in community. We're called to be um and it's like, how can we do that if we're constantly distracted? How can we enjoy our family? How can we enjoy the relationships that the Lord has blessed us with if we're not taking the time to just sit still and be bored? And you may be wondering, how can being bored lead to you enjoying your family more? And I think as your brain gets acclimated to sitting still and being bored and not constantly overstimulated, but being able to actually focus, then you create this. I think in science it's called neuroplasticity, where you're able to change and shift your mindset based off of the thoughts that you're thinking, um, or the actions and decision making that you're doing. Like if you're choosing to sit still, your brain becomes acclimated to you to actually that you can actually relax, you can decompress, you can be present where you are. And I'm going to encourage you to dive deeper into what it means for you to sit still and to be bored, and to actually see the fruit that can come from it if you actually take the time to sit in silence and be quiet before the Lord. And you're just, and it's hard sometimes. Sometimes you just get thoughts. You're like, what in the world did this come from? Like, why did this thought come to my head? Yeah. You're like, why did this thought come to my head? And I've been there, like, where I'm like, okay, I was like, Lord, today I'm going to choose to be still. I'm going to choose to just allow boredom to overtake me and just to be like, be in. And then these random thoughts come to my head. I'm like, what in the world? Where did this come from? But keep pressing forth. You'll be okay. Um, but as you get used to it, you'll begin to just be amazed by the creativity. And it doesn't even have to be creativity in the big things. It can be creativity in, maybe there was something that was annoying you, or a task that was annoying you, and you find a different way to do it because you were able to actually think, okay, like this is annoying me, how can I do this better? And I don't think we get an opportunity to do that when we're constantly distracted and overwhelmed by the next thing. And I want to encourage you that though this is something that is uncomfortable, embrace it. See what the Lord can do through your yes and your willingness to embrace the uncomfortability of being bored, especially when you're so used to constantly being distracted and overstimulated by um, social media or constantly scrolling on your phone. Boredom can lead to innovation and problem solving to help the current generation, but also the next generation as well too. Boredom can be managed by embracing the uncomfortability, by saying yes to just sitting still, even though your thoughts may just go crazy. Yes, you may not be bored all the time, and it's important that you do work and that you do what the Lord is calling you to do in the task that you're given at hand or what is expected of you, depending on what you're doing. But next time you feel bored, just sit in it, be uncomfortable, and see what happens next. By doing nothing, you are actually being most productive and creative. When I first heard that, I got that from the TED Talk I was listening to. I was like, And I began to think, actually, when I am sitting down and just allowing myself to relax and decompress and to think, I am actually my most productive and creative self. And I think we think that creativity and productivity comes just by constantly doing. But I actually believe that constantly doing and being productive is actually leading you to be less productive. But when you actually sit still and be bored, it actually leads to more creativity and um, more productivity. And that's amazing that in scripture encourages us to be still before the Lord. And just want to encourage you in that and hope that you are encouraged by this podcast episode and that it was informative and that it gives you something to think about and allows you to shift your mindset and allows you to grow and be stretched. And that is my desire for you as your host. And with that, that is the end of today's podcast episode. And I hope that you have a good day. I'm currently filming this at 10:58 at night. So, yeah, I hope you were able to bear with me in this podcast episode, but I hope you enjoy this and that you're encouraged. And with that, that is the end. Until next time, live with legacy leading to the future. Goodbye, friends.